Breaking. Trump just made an urgent announcement. Democrats panicking. In an unprecedented move, President Donald Trump has warned the American people of a potential false flag attack in the United States in the wake of the release of the FISA memo which the Democrat Party and their FBI is desperately trying to deflect attention from. Although in these comments which he made the day before giving the State of the Union were largely overlooked, President Trump said we also need to look at what might be the inner workings of false flag events which have affected our nation. These statements were reported in January 30 PBS NewsHour story where they stated we need to look at President Trump's comments in light of 9/11, Pearl Harbor and numerous other huge events that have briefly unified America. Via PBS. I would love to be able to bring back our country into a great form of unity, Trump said. Without a major event where people pull together, that's hard to do. But I would like to do it without that major event because usually that major event is not a good thing. The president also said the country's divisions date back to both Republican and Democratic administrations, citing the scandals that led to Clinton's impeachment by the House in 1998. I want to see our country united. I want to bring our country back from a tremendous divisiveness, which has taken place not just over 1 year, over many years, including the Bush years, not just Obama. He said. Trump went on to say that uniting people would also be hard because of issues like health care, because some people want free health care paid by the government and others want health care paid by private, where there's great competition. Could the president be hinting at a huge war or event caused to deflect from the corruption in the FBI and the Democrat Party? Whatever it is, Trump makes it clear he wants to avoid it at all costs. Via the Herald News. America's sense of unity, patriotism strengthened after 9/11. In the first day after the Twin Towers fell, when the skies were silent and the country cried, a sense of community extended from Portland, to Portland, Maine. We were all Americans. We all felt the same loss. In the first day after the Twin Towers fell, when the skies were silent and the country cried, a sense of community extended from Portland, to Portland, Maine. We were all Americans. We all felt the same loss. Sheriff Thomas Hodgson was in Washington, D.C., on September 11, 2001, waiting to speak to a congressional committee. He drove back to Massachusetts that day. 4 days later, he was in the brand-new Bristol County Sheriff's Department mobile command post, heading to New York. He and a contingent of more than a dozen local law enforcement officers spent several days at Ground Zero. In those first days, it was enough to say you were working on the piles. Everyone understood it, Hodgson said. That was just one way New York City came to feel like a village, Hodgson said. People brought their skill to Ground Zero, to help and do what they could, Hodgson said. We all came from different parts of the country with different skills, but we all had one mission. And, when you left at night, people were standing out on the corners at 11:30 at night, talking to each other and feeling the effects of what happened to our country. It was a patchwork of Americans coming together when needed to help repair something that was broken. I think it changed everyone. That change has lasted, sometimes in unexpected ways. In many ways, this is a kinder country than the America that existed on September 10, 2001, said the relevant Donald Meyer, pastor of the First Baptist Church, 228 North Main Street. Fall River is a good example, he added. I do see that volunteerism has increased in our city, Meyer said. People want to take care of their neighbors more now. Cause and effect. I couldn't tell you why it happened, but we do have more people ready to help. Meyer saw that last fall, when he and a group of concerned citizens put out a call for volunteers to help operate overflow shelters for the homeless during the winter. They got more volunteers and organizations willing to host a shelter than they thought possible, Meyer said. Sometimes, it was very simple, Meyer said. People would walk in and say, I want to help. That contrasts with the late 1980s, when the city began its first soup kitchen and had trouble finding volunteers to run it. Now there are several soup kitchens in the city, each with a strong cadre of helpers. The First Baptist Church provides a home for the Tuesday night branch community supper that is run, each week, by another community group. "We have people signed up months in advance to offer the supper," Meyer said. "That is different from 10 years ago, when we had to go looking for people, week to week." The relevant Thomas Bevilacqua of the Old Catholic Church took over as the coordinator of the volunteers who go to churches and shelters, asking to help. "People walk in and say they want to give back," Bevilacqua said. "There is a lot of willingness to volunteer. People say they feel they owe it to the community." For some, patriotism took a specific form. Jimmy Rosa returned from 2 weeks at Ground Zero, towing damaged and abandoned cars in a Rosa's towing truck. One of his first acts when he returned to Fall River was to call the fire department and offer junked cars and a room to work so department members could train on their jaws of life and extrication tools. Armed Forces recruits reported enlistments shot up. Lino Rego, the commander of the American Legion James Morris Post in Westport, said the attack on America by Al-Qaeda reaffirmed the patriotism that was already evident in the veterans group. But it drove home, anew, the need for service to the country, Rego said. "We talk about September 11, 2001, Rego said. "We talk about it like we do December 7, 1941. A lot of people think about their country now and their obligations to it. About patriotism. More people think about that now than they did before September 11, I think. It was a wonderful thing to see so many people united right after the strikes," Hodgson said. "Even senators and congressmen from different parties were standing together. We should have taken that opportunity to say that this must be sustained, that we are all Americans." And when he doubts that, Hodgson said, he thinks about the feeling he had as he was leaving New York City after 2 weeks of volunteer work there. "To be there was as much an honor as a duty," Hodgson said. "I have never been a conspiracy theorist, but now that President Trump mentions it, it's truly terrifying that in order to be united in this country we need to go through a 9/11 or Pearl Harbor-style event. Whatever happened to love thy neighbor and all that? This past year has been so heartbreaking to see a man in the Oval Office trying to do right by the American people for once and being fought every step of the way. And why? Because he beat the anointed candidate, which was crooked Hillary Clinton, who no one liked or wanted as president? The opposition in this country needs to start taking a clear long look at themselves. Resisting and all that is all great as a feel-good tactic and a slogan. But when so many of us were priced out of the health insurance market, resisting didn't do a damn thing for us. Maybe your best bet is to just sit back and try to beat him in 2020. Like my side tried to do in 2012 and we did in 2016.